the day before we actually crossed the border, there was a final, it's called an order of battle meeting. So George asked me to be the note taker in this meeting. George Tenet, the director of the CIA. George is at the head of a conference room table, and I'm sitting directly behind his right shoulder, taking the notes. And everybody else is on a TV screen, right? And then the general says, if all goes as planned, we can be in Tehran by August. George is sitting there. And then he leans forward and turns off his microphone. And he says, did he say Baghdad or did he say Tehran? And I said, he said Tehran. And George says, have these people lost their minds? And then he turns the microphone back on and just sits. My station chief in Pakistan, on the strength of the Abu Zubaydah capture, was promoted to associate deputy director for operations. So he calls me and he says, you need a job? I said, actually, no, I just got a job. They put me in charge of counterintelligence for Alex Station. And he said, yeah, well, they just made me the associate deputy director. And he said, I want you to come up to the 7th floor and be an executive assistant. I said, oh, done. So my first day on the job was the following Monday. And I go in and I said, okay, so what are we doing? And he says, I actually can't tell you. You have to go to this room on the 6th floor and there are some secrecy agreements for you to sign, and then we'll tell you what we're doing. And I said, okay. So I went to the 6th floor and knocked on the door, and I knew the guy who told me to come in. And I said, oh, hey, what are you doing? He said, so you're the new executive assistant. Wow, you've made a heck of a path for yourself. I said, yeah, I got lucky. Pakistan was totally positive. I said, what are we doing? And he said, well, why don't you sign these first, and then I'll explain everything. So there were 6 of them, and I signed 6 secrecy agreements saying I'll never, ever reveal what I'm about to learn unless it's declassified, which it has been. And so I sign. I go, okay, what's up? And he goes, well, now this is May of 2002. 2002. He goes, well, next year in February, we're going to invade Iraq. We're going to overthrow Saddam Hussein, and we're going to open the largest Air Force base in the world so that we can move all of our air assets out of Saudi Arabia and deprive Osama bin Laden of the ability to say that we're polluting the land of the 2 holy mosques. I was dumbfounded. And all I could even blurt out was, but we haven't caught bin Laden yet. And he said, buddy, the decision's been made. And the battle lines have been drawn, he said. He said, CIA is opposed to this, state is opposed to this, and the Joint Chiefs are opposed. But the ones that are for it are OVP, the Office of the Vice President, OSD, the Office of the Secretary of Defense, and the National Security Council. And I said, so the decision's been made. He said, the decision's been made. Yeah. So I walk back downstairs, and the boss says, so you're read in? And I said, are they out of their minds? And he said, yes, they are. But we're not a policy agency. We're a support agency. And if they tell us to invade Iraq and overthrow Saddam Hussein, that's what we're going to do. And so that's what we worked on until we invaded Iraq and overthrew Saddam Hussein.
Mm. So Tenet was the director at this time, right?
Yes.
And didn't you, I don't know if it was the same day or not, but walk by his office and see him doing a little art project in there?
Oh, it wasn't Tenet.
Okay.
I went up to it was the chief of something called the Iraq Operations Group. I had to pick up a briefing book. There was a principals meeting. The principals meeting, it's a policy meeting chaired by the vice president, and it has the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, CIA director, NSA director, and chairman and vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So I went to pick up the book, and the chief of the Iraq operations group, he's sitting there with a piece of paper, and he's got these Crayola, what do you call them? The
Crayons?
No, not the crayons, but the magic markers. I go, what are you doing? He says, oh, I'm designing the new Iraqi flag. I said, don't you think the Iraqis should design the new Iraqi flag? He goes, I don't know. I thought I'd do it. And I said, you're using the colors of the Israeli flag. Like, this is what happens when they put a Mexican guy in charge of the Iraq operations group. I said, buddy, the Iraqi flag is the colors that it is for a reason, right? You got to have green because it represents Islam. You have to have red because it represents the ethnic minorities, right? You got to have the 3 stars because that represents the Sunnis, the Shias, and the Kurds. You can't just take the Israeli flag and change it around a little bit. So thank God nothing ever came of that. But they were serious. It got worse than that. That was minor. It got way worse than that.
How so?
People just getting too big for their britches. Well, the day before we actually crossed the border, there was a final, it's called an order of battle meeting. I always hated the order of battle meetings because I'm not a military analyst and I just don't care where elements of the 5th Army Corps are in comparison to the 3rd Infantry Division. I don't care. Right? Let the generals figure that out. I trust in their judgment. You don't have to tell me that the 23rd Infantry Mounted Division is, I don't care. So George asked me to be the note taker in this meeting. George Tenet, the director of the CIA, asked me to be the note taker. And the meeting was chaired by the vice president. So it was Cheney and his guys like Scooter Libby and a couple of other people, Condi Rice, Colin Powell, the chairman and vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Don Rumsfeld, Condi's deputy, Hadley.
Steve Hadley?
Steve Hadley. I couldn't remember his first name. He was there. And then General, I forget his name, he was commander of CENTCOM at the time. He had replaced, Schwarzkopf and Hoare and all these other people that had come after Schwarzkopf. General, was it Taylor? Maybe Taylor. I can't remember anymore. So Cheney starts the meeting. General, why don't you give us the order of battle? And I'm like, so I'm sitting. George is at the head of a conference room table, and everybody else is on a TV screen, right? And George's microphone is right in front of him, and he's just sitting there like this. And I'm sitting directly behind his right shoulder, taking the notes. So we're sitting there, and they're like, the 5th Army Corps is in this position, and the 23rd Infantry is here, and they're going to move north, and this one's going to move west, and this one's going to come south, and the blah, 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 blah. And I'm writing it all down. And then the general says, if all goes as planned, we can be in Tehran by August. George is sitting there. And then he leans forward and turns off his microphone. And he says, did he say Baghdad or did he say Tehran? And I said, he said Tehran. And George says, have these people lost their minds? And then he turns the microphone back on and just sits. So I'm taking all the notes. And one of these idiots from the NSC says, when we cross the border, they're going to throw flowers at us. And I wrote it down. The meeting ends. I go back to the deputy director's office. He said, how'd the meeting go? And I said, did you know we were going to invade Iran? And he goes, ooh, are they still talking about that? And I go, yeah. They said we could be in Iran by August. And he goes, listen, we're not invading Iran. we're probably not even going to be successful in Iraq. But these guys don't know anything about the Middle East. Nothing. We're not going to invade Iran. They talk about it like they think they know what they're talking about, and they don't know anything. I go, okay, I hope you're right. And sure enough, we got bogged down in Iraq. Never went anywhere near Iran.
What's up, guys? Thank you so much for taking the time to watch the interview. As you could probably tell, this is a brand new channel. So if you got anything out of this at all, please like the video, leave me a comment, tell me what you thought, tell me who you'd like to see on the show. I see every like, I read every comment, and I appreciate all of it, especially in the beginning, because as you know, that kind of support goes a long way on these platforms. So most importantly, I have some awesome guests coming up in the future for interviews. So please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of them. But again, thank you for your time. Appreciate the support and hope to see you again soon.